what I perceive this conversation is really going to be about is perhaps the future of the way that we source food, prepare food, the quality of the meat, obviously, Chef, that you're going to talk about. I think there's a bigger picture conversation here that isn't just about the world of healthcare and benefits that I operate in. We're talking about human beings, the optimization of food infrastructure in the United States, as lofty as that sounds. And so I appreciate you guys, but I just want to set the stage before we actually introduce you for the audience that's listening, because I think this is a really important conversation, and I want them to know the why we're here today to talk. But so Chef, if you don't mind, add to what I just said. What is this show going to be about? And then we're going to get Chris's background and your story as well, and that'll bring us to the present day. But what you, in your words, since you're the expert here, what is this show going to really cover?
Yeah, we're going to cover, I'm Chef Austin Simmons. I've been in restaurants since I graduated high school. I was French trained. I've traveled the world and cooked in many countries. I have recently departed restaurants to highlight Chef and Rancher, which is my new company with Larry Ludicky. I'm the chef, he is the rancher. We've been working on cattle genetics and cattle program for about 8 years now. He's been working on it much longer than that. And Chef and Rancher encompasses a trademark hoof to fork. And we will be talking about why this program is so important to me and why I think it's so important to health and why I think that it's going to change kind of people's perspective on cattle and animal industry, and then how I will fully encompass the animal into future distribution and direct ship to consumer and restaurants that encompass all of it.
So why don't you give us your background, Chris?
Yeah, so my name is Chris Pierron. I am an employee benefits advisor for the Baldwin Group. I've had a very unique career that's kind of collided two different industries at one time. For the insurance side, so, I'd been with Baldwin Group for a year now. Before that, I was with another large broker house for about a year. And before that, I had about 13 years where I was independent and I was a one-man shop where I was my own account manager, broker, everything. So
literally one-man shop, running it all yourself.
Okay. Yeah, so which was a lot of work. It built an appreciation for what account managers do and kind of the whole picture. And I also got to keep the full amount of commission when it came to it. So
that doesn't hurt.
Weirdly, though, I had two careers that kind of went on simultaneously. So there's 15 years of insurance, and then right on top of that was a 20-year career in fitness.
Okay.
So, in the fitness world, I started off, working for gyms, and we'll kind of go through the history of that. But in a nutshell, I've been a master personal trainer. I've got 6 certifications through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. They're certified personal trainer, corrective exercise specialist, performance enhancement specialist, fitness nutrition specialist, which is the big one. And I've got a Cooper cert in cardio, which you guys are well aware of.
Yeah, I had a Cooper certification for a while too. Thought I was going to be a personal trainer and follow in your footsteps, but it never materialized. But where's the overlap for you? Because ultimately, your fitness background, your understanding of nutrition and health probably shaped your career and the consultation you were giving on behalf of employers for their benefits as well, right?
Early on, it did not.
Okay. Did you think that you couldn't tie those two together?
I mean, I always, in fitness, you're taught to do value-based selling. And I definitely brought that into the insurance world, which I thought was different. It wasn't just transactional. But I never in a million years thought that they would collide like they are now. I mean, in my world today, almost every meeting we have with a first-time prospect is about the food system and nutrition. And it's been great because it's like, okay, that 20 years wasn't a wasted 20 years. It's actually coming in full swing, especially with RFK now, make America healthy again. So,
but I would say I share the sentiment, and this, obviously this is where Chef comes in as well, is that the missing link for a lot of what we talk about for improving the quality of benefits, improving outcomes, and it comes to the insurance side, there's a missing link, which is the food system, what we eat, the average general level of health or lack of health for human beings in the United States. And I think that's a big driver of the cost component of what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, I would say, so early on in fitness, everything was geared towards cosmetic, right? We'd want people to eat healthy so they could look a certain way. And that was, in most people's minds, that's where it was built to where if you're going to be healthy, you have to eat broccoli and rice and chicken for every meal, right? And so people think immediately bland, no flavor, nothing. So as time went on, and what I hope people get out of this podcast is with food, there are a lot of things snuck into our food that are highly addictive. And so when people say, oh, I could never live without blank, or I could never live without blank, that's why I can't eat healthy, you're addicted to those things. And there's a lot of situations, we'll go through seed oils, things like that, to where you've got these hidden little items that are in your food every day that are not only poisoning you, but they're also addicting you. Yeah. And so if we can just get the world to see these certain items we're going to talk about today, if you can just be educated on and be aware of it, the food doesn't taste any different if you take them out, right? If you take seed oils out and you put olive oil in, the food will probably taste better. So you're not going to not be able to live without that food. You might actually elevate how it tastes. And if you can remove all of those bad ingredients and poisons, you'll find that food actually tastes better. Yeah. I know we eat extremely clean, and food tastes better now than it ever has. For example, if you get off of sugar for a long time with no sugar and then you eat a raspberry, it'll blow your mind. Yeah. But if you eat sugar every day, then you eat a raspberry, it seems bland and tasteless, right? So that would be my big takeaway for the audience.
Well, Chef, and I want to get your bio too, because I mean, you have classical training. You've trained, in France and other places. You ran restaurants. You were a chef. But I really want to know your background before you even got into this world of ranching and caring about the genetics of beef. What was the story for you of learning to cook?
Yeah, my background is I grew up here in Texas, in Arlington, not too far from here. So thank you for having me back home.
Yeah, you bet.
And I was in high school. I was a big outdoors guy. I was an ADD kid in school. I couldn't read and retain. I didn't want to be there. I struggled with a lot of that. But I started working at 15, mowing and weeding baseball and soccer fields in Arlington and for the city. And I guided duck hunts in Wichita Falls in the winter, and I worked on dirt track race cars in the summer. And I loved being outdoors. I rode my bike everywhere. I just, school was not for me. And I was made to feel like, I was less than everybody else. Which, knowing what I know now about food, I probably could have solved some of that as a kid had that generation understood. But when I was about to graduate high school, I was just going to keep working. And my dad was, my dad and my mom were divorced at a young age, but he was always around. They moved all over the place. He flew me to see him every weekend. And I came down 3 weeks before graduation. He's like, "Where are you going to school? I'm paying for it." And I'm like, I'm not going to school. I'm going to keep working. He goes, "You're going to school and I'm paying for it, and you got 3 weeks to decide." My daycare was a 3-bedroom home, converted garage, and I called her my Meemaw and Peepaw. She was a very special lady to me. She would cook 2 meals a day for all the kids there in a small galley kitchen. And I can remember begging her. I was with her from 2 to 14 in daycare, and I can remember begging her to sit on the counter and watch her. And she did cast iron fried chicken, sweet corn, mashed potatoes. She did some of the craziest things with pancakes you can imagine. And there's a lot of inspiration, a lot of awards I won in culinary because of what I saw her do in my own way, which is really cool. So that was the first recollection that I liked to cook. And then junior year, 7th and 8th grade, not junior year, but junior high school, I spent the summer cooking. I loved Emerald Live when it first came out. He was, I just loved the way he brought food and fun and around cooking. I watched Great Chefs, Great Cities before that. And then the other ladies in my life, my stepmom and my mom cooked twice a day. I had breakfast made for me every morning. I even had a menu for the week. And my stepmom's a phenomenal cook. In her second life, she would be a chef. She had a big career in AT&T Mobile. So I came down and told my dad. I went back home and I saw the Cordon Bleu in Austin on TV, and I'd never worked in a restaurant. I came back home, Dad's house, said, "I'm going to culinary school. I graduate, and 45 days later, I got to start class, and I need an apartment. There's no dorms, and it's go time." And he's like,
"What do you think about that?
You want to be an effing chef?"
Yeah,
was his original response. And I said, "Or a cook?" And I said, "No, I think I want to be a chef." And he goes, "No, you're not doing that. You've never done that in your life. You're not doing that." And my stepmom said, "Wait a minute. You said whatever he wanted to do, you'd pay for it. And I said, I'm going. So I need you to move me. So he did, and I went to culinary school.
Did you immediately take a liking or realize you had a talent?
First 6 weeks was class, and then 6 weeks lab through the whole 12 months. First class I took was nutrition. I was 250 pounds when I graduated high school, size 42 waist. I think the most Jack in the Box tacos I ever ate in one sitting was 25.
Oh my God, dude.
So I wasn't like, completely obese because I was always active, but I did not eat a good diet when I was young. So we took nutrition. I learned how to read a nutritional deck, and that kind of really sparked my interest. And my goodness, I have no idea how many calories I intake and what percentage of those are fat or sugar or any of that. And we get through that, and then we get to lab, and lab is demonstration. It's 2 chefs, stadium seating, demonstrating 10 recipes, and then out of a curriculum book, and then you go back to your respected station solo and you recreate the recipes. I can honestly say throughout all the labs, I never opened the book.
Okay.
I scored the highest score on the mystery basket tasting, and that's your final grade. It's 16 or 17 ingredients. You have to create a 6-course progressive tasting with a complete dessert. Out of 3,500 graduating kids, I scored 19 and a half. I made a chocolate souffle with a vanilla bean Grand Marnier creme anglaise. I had the hardest French teacher of the whole school. She came up in an era where it was hard to be in a kitchen as a female back then, and she was awesome, but very difficult. I was the only one of 3 to complete a complete dessert, and certainly the only one that made a chocolate souffle. And the only reason I was able to do all of that is because I only need to see a recipe once, and I have this visual ability to remember it. And so I learned that in culinary, in the kitchen, because I was so passionate about being able to be good at it and recreate it, that I had a photographic memory of seeing it and learning it. You know, one of the things that I'm passionate about is not everybody learns the same. So I'm very visual. I can still remember every recipe I was taught by any of my mentors or culinary time, place, instant, and the exact, process of making it and ingredients. I don't know sometimes if I'm in a conversation, if I'm hearing what some people are saying, if I'm not interested, but I have this knack in where it channels my kind of ADD, if you will. And I can remember 25 things that I'm cooking at one time where the average person can remember 3 to 5. So I think God really pushed me in that direction. And, I never looked back after that.
Well, where in the world, and this is, Chris, I know you can comment on this too, where in the world did you start to discover that you needed to care about the ingredients themselves or what you were putting into food? Because I think probably early on you were focused on creating a meal, creating an experience around the ingredients you have, but not necessarily thinking seed oils versus lard or the wheat or anything like that. So where did you discover that there was a bastardization, if you will, of some of the food products themselves?
It wasn't until I went to France and worked in Paris that I started having moments where I'm like, oh my God, it's so different here than home. And I was 27 years old in Paris, France, staging in 2- and 3-star Michelin restaurants as an American from Texas. The French are a bit different in the kitchen than how I grew up. I mean, so it was a very scary experience for me, but I loved cooking so much that I could hold my own. But I guess the first realization that we do a lot of things different here was the first place I staged was a very famous bakery in Paris. And the baker had forearms that were 3 times the size of mine, and all the bread's made fresh and fermented. And he asked me to go find 2 pounds of flour for him, and I went and looked through every bin, and all I saw was this tan corn flour. Well, here, that's corn flour. And I was pretty scared to go back to him, but I finally did and said, Chef, I can't find the flour. And he was like, you American, come with me. And I go to his office, and he's got a wheat diagram on the wall, and he says, tell me what part of that is white. And I'm like, Chef, I don't see any white. And he goes, exactly. Now come with me. And he takes me to the bag of flour. He opens it and he says, we mill our wheat fresh here. It is a tan, yellowish color. It molds in 60 days. You guys inherit it from your grandparents. You think it's white, it's bleached and processed. It's bad for your stomach. And, as long as it doesn't have weevils, you think it's fresh. And that was, at the time, I got to be honest, I was like, no, flour's white. My Meemaw mom, stepmom, every lady in my life's cooked for me uses white flour. He's crazy. But as I kept staging through different countries and seeing how they did different things, and as I've gotten more educated and I started negotiating distribution and supply for multi-unit restaurants, I kind of got to go back to those days and put it all together.
Having spent years working alongside healthcare leaders, brokers, and employers, I know how overwhelming healthcare can feel for our customers. We've all been there. Those renewal conversations that never seem to get easier. Rising pharmacy costs and medical costs, and no real transparency into where healthcare dollars are going. That's why I'm excited about Nomi Health. They're not just fixing the old system. They've rebuilt self-funded benefits from the ground up. With Nomi's network, you can offer something truly different. No copays, no deductibles, zero out-of-pocket costs when members see a provider. It's the kind of benefit that makes everyone ask, why hasn't healthcare always worked this way? Ready to bring your clients something different? Visit nomihealth.com and see how Nomi is rebuilding healthcare, one employer and one community at a time. Chef, I want to get into Chef and Rancher here in a second, but there's obviously some things that happened before, both good and bad. So can you talk to us about operating that restaurant? And then, give us I don't want to reveal, but there was a moment where you got a lot of notoriety because of somebody posting about you that I'd love to hear that story too.
Yeah, I was there for 16 years. It was a hybrid concept when I started there as sous chef. And I ran that kind of remodeled under the leadership, and it was a tough market. It was a lot of years of really hard work and trying to understand what I could bring to the table as a chef with a menu that was already there in place. And, I was traveling during that time, staging in other countries, and I was starting to develop who I thought my identity was as a chef. And I grew up on no seafood. My mom wouldn't eat a fish stick. So after being trained French and working in Japan and Singapore, Paris, being to all these nice restaurants, I love seafood. So I wanted to bring a lot of that to the Woodlands or Texas. And, I think we're a state that recognizes good beef. And I think the world and especially nationally is starting to recognize that we raise good beef. We have more cattle on hoof in Texas than anywhere else in the United States. Now, there are lots of feed yards and cattle in the Midwest, but so we converted the restaurant to Tris, and that was named after my firstborn. I wanted it to symbolize our staff as family. First part in our Constitution in restaurant business for me is that staff is the first priority. Guest is second. So when I developed Tris, I was working on, a different steak section in the menu, and prime beef drove me crazy. I couldn't understand how you can order a Packer box of prime beef, and 1 week, and the French taught me to butcher everything. So I would cut all the tenderloins in the box, and then the next week I'd order another box of prime beef. It'd come from a different packer, which I thought were ranches at the time. And every week, flavor, texture, marbling, tenderness, completely different. And that drove me insane.
The lack of consistency?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And flavor and just everything. And, it's not like you just change the menu price. You're paying a market average for the price on the beef. So you can't just go change the menu price and give the guest a lesser steak. It says prime, must be. Can't send it back. And that just kept me up at night. If I order a 20 to 40 pound Alaskan halibut, wild caught, which halibut is, and I keep the chain of cold from the time it's distributed and in my restaurant, as long as it's fresh, it's the same canvas every time. Beef changing from week to week, saying the same thing, made me manic. I couldn't accept it, nor could I count on the value I was giving to the guests. If you come to my restaurant and you have a steak this week and it's phenomenal, and you come back next week and it's not phenomenal, but it's cooked right and it's seasoned the same and everything's the same, it's my fault. But no, actually, it's the prime industry's fault. Okay. And that is what started my obsession for cattle.
Well, with that distribution challenge, what causes the lack of consistency in the prime meat?
So, select choice and prime is regulated commercial cattle. There are lots of regulated programs underneath that those different grades, none of which are regulated by genotype. They're all, genotype is genetics, DNA. Yeah. They're all regulated by phenotype. Phenotype's the hide. Okay. So to be Black Angus, certain programs under that have a few other criterias, but the main criteria is that it's 52% or more phenotype, which means it's 52% or more black hide. But commercial cattle is bred to all different continental breeds. You can have all different colored cows or solid black, and it has zero genetics of DNA Angus. Yeah. So the whole system is developed for mass production in the most efficient way. And there's no way you're ever going to have consistency when you have no clue what genetics you're breeding. And then the market commands weight to age, is a stock market essentially. The faster you get that calf fat to hit the weight limit under 28 months, nothing can be graded after 28 months. That's a cutoff. The faster you get it to that weight, which is what the market says, faster you sell it. So animal production is hard work. Ranching is not easy. So if we can get them fatter faster, we can sell them faster, which means less days on feed, less days on ranch, more efficiency, more money made.
More money made, and obviously controlling the price point. And you have, to be fair, the credit to feed 350 million people daily in the United States. Obviously, not everybody's eating beef every single day, but that's a massive number of people, a population that's dispersed across a very large landmass. And so it's been done in order to achieve that end. But it sounds like to me, then quality suffers and the predictability of the quality suffers. And then what we're eating, what's going into feeding those animals, then gets digested by us and has some negative impacts for health. And so was there a rabbit hole you found yourself starting to go down once you uncovered the inconsistency there?
Yeah, I watched a documentary in 2014 called Steak Revolution on Netflix. Okay. And it was the first thing that changed my idea of cattle. It's a documentary about all different European breeds, American, and then it goes into this guy articulating the 10 best places in the world to eat steak. At the time, Japanese Wagyu, importing it, Kobe beef, known as the best. But the best, that was number two at the end of it. Number one was a guy in Spain hand feeding uncastrated steers, which is does not happen here. Okay. Talking about testosterone and its effects to muscle, and he hand fed these animals for 15 years. Well, if I tell you that 28 months, it can't be graded select choice or prime, which is the value to the market, 15 years is a whole lot past 28 months. So I became obsessed at that point. The beef is cave aged, and it was a different color. Fat was different. I don't know that that's the best beef in the world, but I was obsessed with trying an older animal. I couldn't afford to go to Spain and try his meat, so I asked multiple ranchers in Texas to raise a old cow for me. And what happens is mama cows are on pasture and they're bred back, right? They're on grass in good environments, some supplemented, some not, most. They breed back a calf every year. You have a heifer, which is a mama that has not had a baby, and then you have a first-time heifer that she's had one baby, and then you have a cow. Okay, you have bull calves, steers, and bulls. So I learned that these mama cows that are producing evolution life every year, they throw back, depending on the genetic, 8 to 10 years. And then when that animal's done throwing back calves, she can't get pregnant again. Her embryos are pretty much deficient. Those animals go to what are called cow slaughter facilities. Sure. There's fed processing facilities and there's cow processing facilities. Those animals go to these facilities, and I went to those, and they're pretty much whole animal grind for truck stops, prisons, food system, wherever they need efficiency. Mm-hmm. And that drove me crazy because I couldn't imagine a full blood or a pure blood Wagyu mama giving back life on this great environment and then being not highlighted. So I finally got a ranch heart brand in Texas to give me a mom that was done calving, and I put her on feed for a year. And I went to pick her up, and my F-150 with 2 Arctic coolers, all I'd done is hunted. I had no idea what a whole animal butchering process looked like. And I drove as fast as I could back to Houston, floor to ceiling full of frozen meat subprimals, and started working through that animal. And it wasn't tender enough because that muscle had so much more development. It took me 4 animals to figure out how to age it correctly to get it tender. And then I realized that I had the beefiest bite of steak I'd ever eaten.
Okay.
That was the first steak board. Texas Monthly, you can still see it. Daniel Vaughn came out. I had just won Best New Chef Texas with my tasting menu restaurant from Pat Sharp. So I asked Daniel Vaughn to come out and write about that program. Wall Street Journal picked it up, and then we were asked to come to James Beard House and cook it nose to tail. And all that was scheduled, and COVID shut us down 2 weeks prior to that. And then I lost that program. So at the same time, my partner, Larry, came to me and left samples and said, I would love for you to look at my program. And, I was making chicken Parmesan lasagna to keep the staff employed under complete shutdown. And I told him, I said, look, it's got great marbling. I've tried every Wagyu program on the planet. I've been importing it from Japan for years. I chase flavor, not fat, although I need the fat property. I appreciate your time. He was 69 at the time, but right now is not a good time, number one. And number two, I'm probably not interested. And I put the samples in the freezer, and I was doing inventory the next month, and I need some steak at home. So I took it home and grilled it, took one bite, and called him. And I said, I don't know what you're doing or how you're doing it, but I will do whatever it takes to get it to market.
So what was it about that bite, though, man?
Beefy.
Okay, so elaborate on beefy, because, I don't really understand, for you as a chef, with the palate you have and the experience you have, when you say it's beefy, what does that really truly mean?
The flavor of an old cow was so good because the muscle had all these years to develop. As the muscle develops, you get more collagen. The collagen is where the amino acids and sugars get trapped. Wagyu has a positive ratio of monosat fat to sat fat naturally, genetically, if it's pure. Monounsaturated fat is omega-3, same property of olive oil. Saturated fat is omega-6. And then we have trans fat and all the seed oils, and I'm still trying to get people to understand the difference between trans fat and saturated fat. I throw monounsaturated fat in, and they think I've given them some pop quiz. Monounsaturated fat, because it has the properties of olive oil, if in its purest form, it won't solidify room temperature. So it has a melting point severely lower than saturated fat. Saturated fat will solidify. Pork fat will solidify room temperature. So if it renders faster, you think about a fillet in a dry pan. You're not going to get a good sear. Yep. The better crust the steak has, the better flavor the steak has. We all know that as even backyard cooks. Well, I couldn't understand until I did all this research and asked all these questions, but the sugar is trapped in the muscle tissue. Okay. It's not trapped in the fat. Fat has a lot of water in it. But I need the fat to render at a lower melting point so I can add very aggressive fuel source and caramelize more of those sugars faster during the cooking process without dehydrating that steak at the top and at the bottom and have it mid-rare right in the center. Because then you have a grainy bite and a soft bite and a grainy bite again. The meat doesn't just melt in your mouth. I didn't understand in 16 about all of those things, but I knew fat wasn't flavor. And then what I was trying to figure out is how I could intermuscular marble or add intermuscular marbling to an animal that had already developed muscle for 9 years. How in the world? I can understand if you feed them high energy consuming food, you could get outer muscular fat, but you're most certainly, you got to explain to me how I'm going to penetrate intermuscular. And those questions were left unanswered. And so I just kept down the journey. And the more Larry taught me about the Wagyu side of what he had done, and the more he taught me about Charolais, and there's American Charolais and French Charolais, they're two totally different things. The more I started putting two and two together and doing research and understanding that amino acids connect the sugar to collagen. It's very simple. That is found in the dense muscle tissue. That has nothing to do with fat. The ability to create a lower rendering point caramelizes those sugars faster with better heat source if you know what you're doing. Our animals across from Black Wagyu and French Charolais. French Charolais has a double muscle called a myostatin genetic. It's the body.
Is that the really jack-looking cows? I know exactly what you're talking about.
Ours are bred to not be as jacked because we would have calving problems, but.
Is that the scientific term? Is jack?
But a myostatin gene has a tenderness quality actually to it, and when you have double muscle, you're going to trap twice as much sugar. The crust of a steak is a Maillard reaction. We've scientifically known that forever. The browning of food is a Maillard reaction. The caramelization of sugars with applied heat source is Maillard.
Explain that to some Maillard. So
Maillard is the process of sugars caramelizing.
Okay.
The browning in food.
Okay.
Bread, vegetables, all of that is sugars caramelizing.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
But what was it that Larry was doing, whether it was the raising process, the breeding process, feeding the animals? Like, what was truly different that gave you that beefy flavor that you described?
So what he was doing is he's crossing a Black Wagyu that he'd been working on the genetics for years. He went to Australia and Japan and studied Wagyu, and he has learned the haplotypes that throw the mono versus the saturated fat, and he's bred those mono and saturated haplotypes dominant. We have a lower melting point than any Japanese beef you can export. And then he was a Charolais breeder, and he was the president of the board of directors for the Charolais Council. He actually wrote some of the ideology that exists today on how to get to a pure French Charolais. And he understood once he put those Wagyu genetics on it that he had a great tasting steak. And then he kept working on those Wagyu genetics to breed that mono almost 100% dominant. And then also he's learned how to breed out that veiny marbling that you see in a lot of Japanese beef. Yeah. There is a specific haplotype, I'll let him tell that story someday, that he's bred out that throws that big veiny striation marbling that doesn't render unless you hammer it, and even sometimes it doesn't render. he has learned how to create the flakiest marbling, but to density, with the knowledge almost to the point where we have to use a different camera system now to grade our beef, because the eye, unless it's frozen, you can't pick up a lot of the marbling.
Well, and so what is it about it that gives it that flavor? Because you're talking to a guy that likes meat, but I'm a layperson in this regard, right? And a lot of people are listening, kind of going, okay, I think I kind of follow, but what does it mean to me? Why is it so much better? Why does it taste? And there's a health component to it that I definitely want to get into, but the taste itself, when you're talking about the rendering.
If caramelizing the amino acids and the sugars that are attached and trapped in the collagen is what gives you the flavor of the beef, the more of that I have, the more flavor the steak's going to have. The ability to render faster allows me to create more caramelization, and trapping that in double muscle, and then not being diluted in the penetrance. So if I have an animal that's dominant monounsaturated fat, and then I have an animal that's double muscle, no intermuscular fat, and I crossbreed them, right, to make an F1, and they're genetic verified on both sides, I'm getting the best of both worlds. I'm getting all the collagen, amino acid, sugar trapped in the dense muscle fiber with no intermuscular fat, and I'm crossing it to an animal that's dominant monounsaturated fat. Then I have a baby that has the best of both worlds. If I took Wagyu and crossed it the way all American Wagyu producers do to these continental breeds that already have intermuscular marbling, I've already told you that only the Japanese have that trait, then I'm diluting the penetrance of the monounsaturated fat by crossbreeding it to an animal that already has intermuscular saturated fat, omega-6. Okay. So now I'm diluting my monounsaturated fat, and I certainly don't have all of that amino acid sugar trapped in the muscle by density because of the muscle tissue. Then it becomes an issue of how you cow-calf, what you feed. It becomes an issue of hormone implants and mass amounts of medicine, and it becomes an issue in manufactured byproduct fed in the feed. Yeah. And all of that adds to the overall flavor of the end result. Well, and the health benefit.
And the health. And, let's go ahead and talk about seed oils, because it's not just seed oils in food preparation and us consuming it, but it's also the way that actually gets into what the cows are eating as well, which then has a downstream effect of flavor and the way that we digest it. And Chef, I'd like to ask the science, if you don't mind, behind that. Like, what is the body doing, or why do you think seed oils are having this inflammatory response inside the human body?
I think all the new data would suggest that seed oil spikes your cortisol. And the higher your cortisol is, the less reception of hormone production, supplemented or non-supplement, you're going to receive. And it also, you're going to have inflammation from all of that, right? Yeah. And there's lots of things in the food system that create inflammation. There's lots of seed oils that are manufactured differently in different countries. It's really hard. It's going to be very difficult for the food system to get out of them. They're cost effective. They're in things in prepared products throughout distribution and throughout supply that you would never know. There's almost impossible way to get out of them currently unless you are cooking your own verified food with someone that's educated in supply, that understands what products have it, what products don't. They keep morphing the name of seed oil into all iterations.
I see it all. Anything you ever have that's packaged, immediately check for palm oil, sunflower oil, canola oil, right? And then you start to go, well, why does my almonds with salt need sunflower oil or palm oil? Why is this in everything, in your bread? To the point, I pretty much assume anything that is packaged in any way, shape, or form has included a seed oil. And then you start to realize how pervasive it is. But it's not just in what we eat, right? There's also a component of it that's fed to the cattle, correct? Or am I mistaken about that?
For sure.
Yeah. So then that process, why are we feeding cattle remnants of seed oils? Like, how's that happen?
Hormone disruption. Oil is the most dense caloric item for the most part that you can really look at. A tablespoon of olive oil, something like 150 calories. So if I'm trying to get an animal larger, faster, for market efficiency, well, I want to disrupt their hormones, right? So where they're not receiving any hormone production to translate to more muscle or to any positive benefit. And I want to feed them the highest energy source I can to convert carbohydrate to convert to sugar. I mean, that's how we have gotten larger in America is that our food pyramid is carbohydrates, bread, pastas. Yeah. So if I want to get an animal bigger, faster, I first off, all cattle have to have some sort of hay or roughage ration. It can be, anything from corn stalks ground to different grasses, different hays. There's all types of roughage, byproduct of most ag. Because they have to scratch the stomach walls to secrete the rumen that breaks down the food in their stomachs. So they're not just fed liquid, but that ration, as it's ground, needs to be moist, or it blows all over the place and it would be hard to feed. So if you moisten that ration with lots of seed oil, we're disrupting their hormones, we're giving them high calorie density and a very small amount of product. We're also then giving them tons of high fructose corn syrup, misshaped Skittles. I've seen it all. And now we have given them a energy source that converts to sugar, is already a modified sugar. And we're going to put weight on them very quickly because they eat, sleep, and use the restroom. And
Yeah.
just like the typical round belly that we're having an epidemic in the U.S. with. So essentially, to answer your question, a lot of times in the restaurant business, I couldn't figure out all these years like why they would buy back our used oil. Like you fry in fryers and you filter, you strain and change it 3 times a week. You fill up these big garbage receptacles of oil and then they come pick it up from you and they pay you for it. Well, they pay you for it because it goes into animal production. They sell it to the feed yards.
So all the used oil from a restaurant ends up in a feed yard and fed back.
Or refined for small engines or whatever else they've come up with. But yeah, the majority of it goes into animal feed.
Which lands in our bodies.
Right?
But I think the worst part about all of it, and this is what we don't do, is when you feed it, when you block disrupt an animal's hormones, okay, and then you feed them so much sugar at one time to fatten them the fastest, what's going to happen? You're going to blow out their livers. Think about if you ate Skittles all day long, or you ate high fructose corn syrup, just drank it, you'd get sick. Yeah. Your body can't survive on that. So if we blow out their livers, what do we have to do? We have to inject them with pallets of antibiotics and medicine to get them well, so we can get them back on that ration immediately, right? The faster we get them fat, the quicker we can take them to market, the faster we make margin. So that's where all the medicine administration has come from, is we are feeding these animals nothing but manufactured byproducts that are hormone disruptors, absolutely awful for their system. It's the cheapest form of carbohydrate, right? And we blow out their livers, we pump them full of medicine, we put hormone implants in them so they will consume more of that faster, and then we take them to market. What's awful, in my opinion, and is starting to be proven with modern technology and this data being opened up thanks to the new administration, is that medicine and that muscle tissue you most certainly are consuming. There's no denying that at this point. How much of the residual seed oil from the feed and the corn syrup, and I mean, I'm not an expert on how much of that carries over in what we eat. I can just tell you that I don't eat the shit.
Pareto Health is the largest benefits captive in the United States. With nearly 3,000 captive members, $1.3 billion of stop-loss premium in force, and almost 1 million covered lives, no other benefits captive comes close to Pareto Health's scale. But it's not just about the numbers. Pareto Health is a mission-driven organization, and that mission has two distinct parts. Number one, to make self-insurance simple and more accessible for small to mid-sized employers. And number two, to arm them with the most powerful cost management tools on the market. So if you're an employer frustrated with your healthcare outcomes, or you're a benefits consultant looking for an alternative to the status quo, it's time to consider Pareto Health. Pareto Health, where employers come to do self-insurance right, to do it easily, and to do it at scale. Well, yeah, and just hearing you say that, right? Like, and what you know about food, you don't eat it, is pretty telling, in my opinion. And so that's what I want to shift gears to is like, okay, I think we've somewhat uncovered the root perhaps of that problem. And I wanted to at least justify some of this is done for margin reasons. Some of it's done to keep costs down. Some of it's to feed a population at scale. And so whether it's good or bad doesn't matter in this equation because it's producing enough food for the demand of food that's there. So I'll just say that. Then how do we correct this? And this is why I stated at the beginning of the podcast why I think this is a really important conversation, because I want to get into what can we do to fix the broken food infrastructure, and specifically Chef and Rancher, what you guys are doing, but also then scaling that up to become a standard. So let's first talk about what are you guys doing specifically at Chef and Rancher to raise better cattle, so not only it tastes better, but it's healthier meat as well.
So we're genetic cross, and Larry has designed both sides pure for all the reasons we spoke of. We are no hormone implants. We're no antibiotics, no steroids, no live vaccines, none of that. We cow-calf under lots of different hay, alfalfa. We use fermented molasses instead of any sort of...
Yeah, why is that? You mentioned that yesterday when we were eating.
Fermented molasses aids in digestion. If you think about kimchi, I'm a fanatic, I'm known for it. Lactic acid in fermented foods help your liver digest what you're eating. So molasses and fermentation helps the animals digest food easily and relaxes their system, their liver. We do not feed any modified. You don't need oil for ration if you're giving the animal large forms of hay and, just a little bit of sugarcane silage. Or, we like to feed a lot of wheat, sorghum, alfalfa, and none of what I saw in commercial feed yards. We age different because of our penetrance. And the way Larry designed the program, every muscle on the animal carries that monounsaturated marbling throughout. I mean, our brisket's so marbled and renders at such a low melting point, there's very few pit masters that can cook it. They see it and their eyes light up, and then they end up with a dry brisket. And I can't teach them fast enough.
Yeah, fair.
And I'm not a pit master, but I've worked smokers overnight many a days in my life, and it has to do with fat render and collagen and a saturated fat on the market in choice prime beef. It renders at a different melting point. So you have to understand the stall, the collagen, and the melting point to achieve a low and slow brisket correctly without drying it out. So we are now direct to consumer on chefrancher.com. It's not Chef and Rancher, it's chefrancher.com. You can see it on Chef and Rancher's Instagram, Facebook, on mine, Chef Austin Simmons. I resigned in restaurants last year due to a lot of reasons, but mainly because I have been working on a cattle program with Larry for years. We've had a lot of people take from us because we have genetics that have really never been seen before. The animal industry is very difficult. And I've always wanted to tell his story in relation to mine and how, I chased an old cow first because of flavor. Larry's has crossed the perfect cross, and he has really put so much effort into breeding these animals back to the purity. If a French Charolais is 100% French and that came from France, I think that's the way God intended it. If a black Wagyu is 100% Japanese and it came from Japan, I think that's the way God intended it. We're genetically crossing things that were put here.
Okay.
And specific origin. The commercial crossing to me it needs to change. To what degree? I'm not sure. We still have to feed America. Yeah. But I can tell you a lot of this is happened because of our need for food at speed.
Well, but your process, what are the challenges with it, right? So what we're talking about is unwinding a really intertwined, long-held food infrastructure and processing. For you to do what you're doing, like give me a size of just the scale of your operation today, and then what would it take to transform the rest of the country to follow suit with that?
I took a sample of ground beef when I started cattle genetics and genetically tested it. It was 128 different genetics from 8 different countries. You have no idea what you're eating. Yeah. And currently, country of origin is on the USDA's deck right now, and I think it'll get voted in soon. We have to start there. Are you eating beef from Uruguay, Brazil, or USA or Mexico? What ground beef are you eating? Yeah. I think education to people about what they're eating and how the animals are treated and fed. I mean, I'm a big advocate for animal cruelty. I mean, I've seen some rough stuff in feed yards, and I've been to many. Just educating people on what's different and what some of these things are doing to your body. And we're susceptible to antibiotics because all of our protein source is that. I mean, I think continuing to educate people and then consumer demand changing and then getting multi-unit restaurants out of the dominant of supply. They are controlling distribution. They're controlling the supply. They are the ones that are commanding that this animal industry exists the way it does because of their price point, their efficiency of speed, and they control distribution because distribution is negotiated on case volume, not said product or said dollar. If you fill trucks, you control distribution. So that's what distribution can hold.
But then what I'm really interested in, if you don't mind indulging me, is like, what would it take to transform the infrastructure you just described and the distribution problem and all that stuff into what is more akin to what you guys are doing at Chef and Ranch, excuse me. So like, is that even doable? What would need to be done, whether that's through legislation or through demand, to then this become the norm?
Well, we would have to change regulation, for sure. We would have to get other countries out of our ag system. Yeah. Way too many ownership of cattle production, pork production is owned by other countries. The dominant packers are owned. The biggest meat supply in the United States is not owned by the U.S., period. If we would take back our land and take back our resource and our cattle, and we would put a little regulation around what's allowed and what's not allowed, we could fix it pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Now, would it cost more? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of smart people in this country. We may be able to engineer things that are tested that doesn't cause all of this, or we may have byproduct and resource that we don't even know. One of the things I'm working on right now is we have a mass amount of rice in South Texas. I'm working on fermenting rice to feed cattle. And I've already started that process. So there's so much resource that we have already that we could turn into potential feed that has a better result without having to medicate the shit out of them. The more fermented foods you can give an animal on high energy feed, the more they're going to be able to digest it without getting sick and having to pump medicine into them. I mean, we know we got to get them bigger quick so we can be efficient. But there's very little inspired direction in all that because we're not involved in 75% of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think another thing too, I mean, we currently subsidize GMO corn, things like that. We've got enough proof that it's causing problems. Why aren't we subsidizing something like this that is healthy for,
I would agree.
You know, and that's very simple, but it's also probably pretty difficult to get there because of who's profiting from behind the scenes and all those things. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to make real change, that would be a first step that would help.
Chronic health issues, surprise out-of-network medical bills, inflated medical and prescription drug prices. These issues cost self-insured employers hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Add to this the rising cost of care and potential for waste across the life of a claim, and it's clear that self-insured employers need innovative solutions that lower their health plan spend. At Valence, we've done just that, developed innovation that shifts the current paradigm, a complete and integrated ecosystem solution driven by data, one that manages and simplifies the complexity of medical claim costs. It is through analyzing millions of data points that we enable employers to realize and fuel cost-saving solutions. Valence experts come prepared from day one, targeting the fraction of claims that will drive the majority of health plan costs. That is how our team lives the Valence promise, engaging early and often for smarter, better, faster healthcare.
Well, so if we needed to refocus subsidies, I would agree with you with corn and soy and things like that, where we're subsidizing the wrong things for other reasons, and then we're using those subsidies to drive down costs to then turn it into fuel or to feed animals, which is causing a lot of these effects. Whose ear do you need to have to get that change? I mean, could we, in theory, subsidize meat production in the way that you do it to keep that cost palatable to the average American? Is that a doable part of this equation?
I think there's a lot of things in the food system. When we talk about GMO, I mean, a lot of that was developed so it could handle spray. I mean, there's really nothing to density of land mass in the United States to American consumer value that can be going in the ground without being sprayed with Roundup and pesticides. It's just, in Europe, gardens are next to every restaurant, right? We just don't value some of that process enough because we don't understand it or we haven't seen it, or we live in areas that are so hot we only get 2 growing seasons. Yeah. So I think the education to a lot of that will help. But the spray is just as bad for you in inflammation as any seed oil. Mm-hmm. So those things
we
have
start
to
to beg
change
the
as well.
question of why that stuff was allowed in the first place to be done to the population. That's where you get down conspiracy rabbit holes to try to question, well, why would we even allow our population to be exposed to some of these pesticides and things like that, knowing what we perhaps know now about it. But I think what we're skirting around, what I don't think is fundamentally true, is that we assume it's going to cost exponentially more. I mean, you were even showing me on your website this morning, I was surprised at some of the price points. So I had this idea in my mind, like, especially after eating the food last night. And so real quick, I haven't even mentioned that, but thank you for setting that up, Chris, and thank you for preparing it. It was phenomenal. Even so much to my daughter, I gave her some of the leftovers later and she goes, this is the best steak in the world. So you would assume the quality that I experienced that I ate would have this crazy price point. And in theory, it actually didn't. So why was I surprised? Like, how are you able to keep it down into a reasonable range, knowing the value that you're actually bringing to the market as well?
I mean, I think we have a lot of health issues today, mentally, digestion problems. I suffered with many of them myself, that we wouldn't have had the food system not been so contaminated, ultra modified foods and all the things that we have for efficiency. And you can source a lot of clean products now. It's not near as hard as it was 3 years ago. Yeah. You just have to know how to read those ingredient decks, and then you have to kind of verify that original source. Mm-hmm. And I think that I want to provide a beef program that has integrity. I want to get it to people. I mean, I would love for my ground beef to be in every Texas school. I do all of this work for the military and serving our soldiers that defend our country, so we are able to sit here and have this conversation. I donate all that to them. So for me, it's not all about money. I mean, God teaches you not to even value money. So it's about helping share my knowledge of the food system. And I can get granular about all of it because I've been through so much distribution and created on every level of the restaurant industry. We need to start making change, and it's going to take people to really go out and do things differently and not charge a margin that is unaffordable to people. So, I mean, you can buy a 1.5 pound ribeye in Chef Rancher right now for $52. Mm-hmm.
Your ground beef was the one was that really surprised me, the price point.
It's $5.
$5 a pound, right? And so we were talking about this, and Chris, I want to get into the application, especially for the lever of employer that I think employers could play in this. But the common argument against a carnivore-based diet or a protein-heavy-based diet is that it's unaffordable for the average person. And I think there is some degree of substance to that argument. But then you look at a pound of ground beef being $5, and maybe you eat 2 pounds a day across your family to get them the protein requirements that are needed, and you spent $10 to do that. But sometimes people aren't willing or able necessarily to cook. And so we've got to retrain and reorient the focus of people to say, hey, this is important. It's not as expensive as you think. A little effort is required in order to prepare the food for your family, but you can also do it in big batches. So it's a multiple day process where you fed your family. And I do think it's unfortunately a misnomer that it's too expensive to do. And so, Chris, how do we bring this into the world at scale with what you and I do, which, Chef, I hope you're okay with this conversation. It's like, there's an avenue, in my opinion, for the employer where 100+ million people in the United States get their insurance or their benefits from their employer, connecting the dots between the food system and the food we eat and the outcomes we're seeing, the bad outcomes we're seeing in healthcare. And so what kind of your opinion on the best way to go about that, Chris?
I think from just listening to Austin talk, before anything, the education has to happen. Okay, we could create a program where we could walk into an employer and offer them, they can some PEPM, they could get quality food, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to receive it until we educate it, right? And if you don't educate the employees, then they're not going to participate in the program anyway. So I think to start, what we're doing now is great. So we need as much of this as possible around the country. But I think if we could find a way to get in front of, because with employers, they come with a big platform. If you got 1,000 lives that are in your company, you can make one relationship with the executives, and you can now reach 1,000 people. It's a lot faster than one-on-one people in the street. So I think it would first be designing a program, not necessarily telling them what to eat, right? Like I said, not here's your meal plan, so to speak, but here are the dangers in some of the foods and some of the things that are in your food we need to avoid. And here is a list of properly sourced places to get the food that you need to eat. And then first, that's going to start building demand, okay? As you start building that demand, then I think you open up the door for some type of service to come in there that could provide, the employer looks at it and there's probably a massive ROI on it, to where if we can start feeding all of our employees properly, then all of a sudden your large claims are going to drop, your chronic diseases start dropping. I mean, all of that. I mean, I know for me, just listening to Austin talk, I'm listening to him walk through how they're trying to fatten up the cows, what they're feeding the cows to get them fat. What if we did a study, and I'm joking here, but I'm not. What if we just had one of Austin's cows live past 28 months, okay? And then we let one of those unhealthy cows eating all the other things live past 28 months, see which ones come down with diabetes first, psoriasis, autoimmune disease. Because if you hear that and you're thinking, man, that's terrible, it's gross they're doing that to cows, but we're doing it to ourselves every single day. And I think it seems simple to us because we're in it and we talk about it all the time, but I think that's the thing that needs to click with most people. Education first, and then I don't know, maybe some type of thing where it's PEPM. You can order X number of, you get certain points, and you can order this amount of food, and maybe the base of your diet becomes properly sourced food.
But it seems cost prohibitive, and until you put it into contrast with like how much a GLP-1 might cost an individual and what percentage of your people on GLP-1s to lose weight, or there are specialty medications that are 6 figures annually for one single person. I guarantee at a relatively small organization, you could feed that organization for far less than 6 figures a year. And could that materially impact 1, 2, 3, 5, 10% of those people to prevent them from having the culmination of a chronic disease and necessitating a drug in the first place? I think the answer is yes, but what you're trying to get an employer or anyone is to bet a little bit farther in the future than right now, right? And invest in food now so that 10 years or 5 years or 3 years from now, that disease state doesn't develop. And it's hard to get an employer to do that.
Well, Steve Jobs, in my opinion, will forever be a GOAT in my book. I mean, for what he did while he was here and what he created with Apple, I just, it's hard to rationalize. If you read his dying memoir, it's pretty simple. Eat your food as medicine, or medicine will become your food. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no arguing how smart that human was. And he died very early because of disease. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to spend it now or you're going to spend it later, and if you add up all the cost of every pill and everything you have to take because of all the disease and the insurance deductibles and payments, you can offset it with food easily. But you are the specialist there.
No, but I'm saying it's a longer term bet, right? And the challenge is convincing an employer or an individual even to invest now for something that may or may not have a perceivable ROI in the long-term future. Because how do I prove that changing my diet prevented me from getting cancer or prevented me? You could possibly draw a connection if it was imminent, but if I'm a 25-year-old guy that I need to be proven that 20 years from now I prevented myself from having a heart attack because I ate better food, that's just harder to objectively prove, right? Yeah, and so then it's more about sentiment or concept that you have to convince them of.
Sure. I do think AI is rationalizing a lot of that, and in the next 5 years, you'll see data that we haven't seen before. I've already seen a lot of it. Now, there's still a lot of it needs to be worked out and vetted and powered, but I think you're seeing a movement that's going to give us facts that we haven't seen before. And if you know that X causes X, then you get to make the decision. Yeah, right. And then consumers can change their habits and decide whether they want that or not.
So Spencer, you actually just said a key word. You said preventative, right? So we have preventative medicine trying to get ahead of things, but everything for the most part, in our healthcare system is reactive, right? We're trying to solve a problem after it's here. We're not doing a whole lot to help it. So I think what better way to do that than with food? I mean, if we can fix what everybody's eating, we're going to fix most of these problems. I mean, I think we can start there and seeing and educating people that how important that is, and we might have a step forward on it.
Well, the real question becomes, what does it take to actually raise the level of awareness across the country? And we've kind of skirted around this, Chef, but I want to talk about, I know Joe Rogan a while ago posted about a restaurant that you had that created some interest for you at the time, but that predated Chef and Rancher. And so what would it take to get millions of people to care about this? And if you want to just tell us the story of the Rogan post, maybe we start there.
Yeah, Rogie, I call him Rogie.
You can call him Rogie. I will call him Rogie too.
He was a blessing for me. He gave me a platform when I needed it the most. I was shunned for cattle genetics. I was off all the top lists as a chef, as one of the greatest, because I became a steakhouse. But what I was trying to do is tell a story of cattle genetics that is like seeing in the dark, because people don't understand the current. It's so hard to educate them. And I believe that a chef is only as good as what Mother Nature provides, and that's an extension of himself. So when Rogan came and said it was one of the best meals of his life, I didn't have to worry about media that was uneducated. People were listening.
So he came to your restaurant and just ate a meal and then made a post under his own volition?
He had heard I'd worked on cattle genetics. He's the only person on the planet to ever know the documentary Steak Revolution. He asked me how I got into cattle genetics. I told him that, and he nailed it. I didn't know how much that man has done to educate people in food. Yeah. He's had so many people over the years on his show that would have already educated the population had they been listening. He's educated a ton of the population already on the food system if you were listening. I don't think people realized that Rogan was the new media until the presidency. He moves the needle. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that human for finally giving me the platform for people to start paying attention to what I've been trying to tell in Larry's story. My single goal in Chef and Rancher and moving on from a very successful restaurant career is to tell that man's story before he can't hear it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. The Texas ranchers like him and Joe Morris that have done things differently. They don't have to. I mean, Larry could sell his herd in this cattle market today, tomorrow, and I mean, he already doesn't need to work. but it would be unquantifiable money. Larry does it because he believes in the health benefits. He believes in me. He's like a father to me. And we feel like, this is what we were put here to do. And I'm so grateful for Larry and the father figure he is, and the fact that he went off the road in traditional ranching, and he does things differently because he wants to help humans. Yeah. He certainly doesn't have to. And we have genetics that have never been seen before. We have cattle that have never been seen before, and everybody wants to buy them. And he tells everybody the same thing. It's not for sale. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Joe Morris says the same thing. We're not interested. We're interested in the future of our children. We're interested in the future of Americans' health and serving them a better beef product with a better fat property, and explaining to them why genetic verification in a different way is where we need to head in the U.S. with beef.
And why is his legacy for you so important to carry forward? What is it about him as a human being or his work that you feel you have an obligation to carry forward?
Because he's been like a father to me. I mean, I'm a rancher in training. I have my first horse. I own my own cattle with him now, well, they're his too. But to be a chef and to be able to fully integrate your own supply, then have the narrative of telling that story. And it started with a man who was 69 that raised animals not as efficient, that cost more. We have been taken from in so many ways to a dollar amount that's unquantifiable. But neither one of us are willing to not keep fighting for what we believe in. So being able to fully integrate your own supply into your direct-to-consumer, into your own restaurant, so you know exactly what you're serving people and you can give that narrative and educate, is the ultimate experience in hospitality. I'm teaching you something. I'm leaving you with something. You won't forget that. And I've been doing that for years. It's just I haven't been able to do it with the whole animal. I didn't have the right concepts to do it. Selling that vision is like almost impossible. But I'm finally in a place, and thanks to Rogan and DT Jr., who came and posted the same, I have that platform now that people are listening. And at the end of the day, if it wasn't for Larry, and he could have gave up 100 times down the road, but when we would struggle, he'd pick me up and I'd pick him up, and we'd get back to the original vision of why our program is so important. And Larry's obsessed with the health benefits of what will help for people. I mean, him and Joe have both gotten off statin. They're both off blood pressure medicine. They eat the animals they raised, and I help them with the other supply items that they shouldn't or should be eating around the beef. And I mean, I can't get my parents off statin and blood pressure medicine, but I got my ranchers that are 74 off of it. They've lost 30 pounds. They're like new humans. Their brains are associating strategic information and strategy in a way that they never were before. I mean, they're like different people.
Well, not to mention, and this is where you really think it took generations to get us in this predicament. It could take us generations to get out of it, right? And we didn't get here overnight. It was a multitude of things over decades and decades to get here. I think some of this corrective action might be seen not in this current, the Gen Z, but even beyond the Gen Z. But you start to run the risk of what does it do to our population in general, whether it's like fertility issues, the general health, longevity. I think for the first time, the lifespan in the United States actually shrunk. Was last year or the year prior to that. So now people aren't living as long, but they're also living poorer quality lives while they're here as well. Like that can't sustain. And if we want to sustain as a prosperous nation and the vanguard or the leader of the free world, our population can't be sick in order to do that. And so there's a vigorousness, there's a healthiness, there's a fertility, all those things play into that. And I think we fundamentally have to get to a point where the food system is corrected for all those other things to actually come downstream. And that's as lofty as that sounds, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode, right? It has nothing to do with self-insurance, has nothing to do with captives, but I think this conversation is important enough because the level of impact it could have if these things start to become popular. And so why don't we do this, fellas, is as we zoom out and say, okay, let's have a look into the future. Let's say you're successful, Chef. You get in the ears of the right people. You land yourself maybe on Rogan's podcast at some point and 25 million people hear the story. What could you imagine 5 years from now or 10 years from now your life to look like? But more importantly, perhaps our food infrastructure would look like?
Yeah, I would hope that at some point I'll have some sort of seat to help creatively redesign a lot of the products that people need, that they want, that they crave. I made my name on creating dishes that relate to people. First and foremost, I don't write menus that are overly fancy with all these crazy words that people don't understand. I underpromise and overdeliver. I'm going to tell you you're eating a crab cake, but it's a kimchi crab cake. And I ferment the kimchi vegetarian, not with any seafood product like traditionally done in Korea. I'm doing that for taste sensation and to work the flavors against each other in your palate for an explosional bite. But, hopefully I get to have a voice in the cattle industry and help kind of change commercial cattle and put it on a different trajectory with Larry. And then I also hope that because I'm educated in all of supply, I'm able to create out of a lot of the issues. And then hopefully a lot of intelligent Americans can become involved in that panel and supply me with what I need to make those products that can be at a cost efficiency, and then provide more jobs for people. And let's make that shit here. Mm-hmm. Quite frankly, let's go back to work here as a society and make clean food products that can be efficient, affordable, and stop supporting the big box multi-units that are profiting massively off poisoning you. Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel that I can affect it, and then consumers can make a decision. You want to be sick? You want to take medicine? Or do you want to eat stuff that will help
heal and for
you?
right now, the awareness creates the demand, and the demand changes the behavior. It changes the market, right? So you've got to generate the demand first and foremost, which I think you are starting to do, and we're seeing the culmination of that. And as much as I can share the story, happy to do that. Hopefully you get access to other platforms to be able to do that as well. But it's just simplifying the whole process too. We spent an hour over coffee and eating this morning, and the end result or the conclusion I came to is I just need to order meat from you. And whether or not that is applicable to everyone or even appropriate, okay, but I've got to simplify it as a busy professional, as a family man. I've got 2 kids. I've got all these things I've got to manage. I need the process of thinking about what food I'm bringing in and how I'm preparing it. That needs to just be as simple as possible. And so I came to the conclusion, I'm just going to order meat from you.
Thank you. And I'm going to start doing videos with the program now that I have it lined out in the proper specs, and teaching people how to quickly cook the different parts of the animal. What's so great about our program is the whole animal performs. Big packer commercial meat doesn't even pull 40% of the cuts I make on this animal. It all goes in the ground. Okay. So I actually can stake out or lightly marinate with clean marinade or season most of my animal in ways that can just be lightly grilled or flat topped, and you can get a thin meat or a butcher's cut that's way less expensive than a ribeye, and I outcut prime beef middles, ribeye, strip, tenderloin. I could tell you 4 or 5 different cuts that I could say, okay, this is a ribeye, and slice it up, and people are like, it's the best ribeye I've ever eaten. But it's a fraction of the cost. Yeah. So to your point, how do we change? Well, if we did more of what we're doing, and there's other ways to do what we're doing, I won't give that out yet, but if we did more of that, we would have and educate people on the cuts that they've never seen before, because the commercial industry can't produce an unchewy product in those cuts. Then we will be able to support multi-price point with a great product. And I'm going to start teaching that soon. Well,
to be fair, even thinking about cuts, you had beef belly last night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've never in my life even heard of beef belly or let alone be served it, and it was tremendous, right? So that's an example of something I would say outside the box that's not normally provided that ended up being delicious, and I wanted more of that particular cut. And it just, I wish people could have seen last night when we had all the food laid out and everybody just sort of, what's that? Oh my God. And you had people coming out of the woodworks that wanted to eat the food. And we were telling your story and they were like, oh my God, this food is incredible. Just that experience alone and thank you again, Chris, for setting that up. So before we had this conversation, I actually had experienced it myself so I could, intelligently speak about it. It was transformative. I mean, and I think that's what you're trying to get is how do I transform enough people through food as possible. And so I'll ask the same question to you, Chris, and then I'll come back to both of you guys to sort of sum up your closing thoughts. But for us in our world, what do you think, same question to you, 3-5 years from now, benefits could look like differently if we incorporated food?
I mean, all we'd be doing is fixing healthcare costs going up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty important thing that we all try to focus on. I mean, we're all trying to, create the next mousetrap to get, we're controlling claims. Why don't we just get rid of the claims? Right? I mean, what would that do? I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of profits lost from people, in certain areas. But if you have a healthier, citizen base in the country, you're going to have significantly less healthcare problems. We're only talking. I mean, if it works the way we think it can work and should work, we're only solving the biggest problem that no one can figure out. So yeah, I'd say that's a pretty big deal.
Well, I would like to look forward and this idea of food as a benefit be actually a reality, right? So like we have benefits in this world for everything. The benefit for food, right, is a glaring absence in my mind right now. I don't have the exact way to go about it, but I would tell you it's not this ridiculous idea that it should or could be subsidized as a benefit because everybody benefits from that being the case, right? And so I hope there's some really intelligent people sitting in rooms right now thinking about how to do just that. And I do think on the other side of that, we could have a materially healthier population. And I was telling you, I think our healthcare industry would be the third largest in the economy in the world if it was its own standalone economy. It's that big of a problem. Trillions of dollars a year. Could we affect 5% of that or 10% of that by food? We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars if we do.
Could we at least slow it down?
Yeah.
Right? We keep growing it, and medical trend and pharmacy trend keeps growing. Could we at least slow it down? I mean, we could put a stop to it. I mean, there are plenty of companies that we know that go out of business every year because of their healthcare costs is too high. So what happens when we can eliminate that problem and stop it or make it go backwards? How many more jobs and how much better does our economy perform when we have more companies that are not completely strapped because of this, what is the number 2 highest cost item on their P&L? I mean, I think it'd be a great future.
Yep. Well, so closing thoughts, I'll go back to you, Chris, and I'll let you have the last word, Chef, is what do you want to say? So we've had an epic podcast. Somebody's still listening. Hopefully they are. Chris, what do you want them thinking about as they leave?
Kind of how I began in the beginning. Realize that you can eat clean without all the poison and the addictive properties and all the stuff that's in there, and food will taste better. And also, I hope it really rang true and kind of hit firm when you heard Austin explaining what a cow goes through when they're fed unhealthy to get fat and going through those things, and realize that the majority of the country right now is literally doing the exact same thing. So as a big chunk of our country is literally preparing themselves for the slaughterhouse is what kind of the way I feel it. Yeah. And that seems very dramatic because we're obviously not going to put them through the slaughterhouse and all that. But you are walking yourself into a form of a slaughterhouse when it comes into dealing with all of these chronic diseases and ultimately an early death. And in my opinion, a much less quality life.
Yeah, I do think it's not just how long we live, but it's the quality of the years that we live simultaneously are super important. And longevity is a component of it. But if you're suffering for the last decade of your life, nobody wants that, right? So the curve that Peter Attia talks about, where how you sustain as long as possible until that drop off happens, you can prolong that decades if you do the right things now. And then your quality of life, and then the life you have that's richer because you get to see your grandchildren grow up, and maybe even, God willing, you have great grandchildren that you get to see be alive. That's the long-term goal for me, is the legacy that comes after that. So Chef, I'll turn to you. what is your closing thoughts to summarize the last couple hours of chatting?
Man, I'm grateful for you having me here. This is the first time I've really got to share a lot of my story, and Larry and Chef and Rancher and Joe. And we mobily cook, so I've traveled all over and cook. I cook for the military, Make America Clean Again has been great. The administration has been great on these fronts. We're not talking anything else politically. If you don't like Trump, you don't believe in a lot of what he does, you have to recognize that he pulled in RFK, who's a Democratic family, and brought him in to work on our system for our children. And if you're not spending your life right now serving people and worried about the next generation, then do you really care about your kids? Because I can promise you, if we keep going down this road of our children being as obese and as sick, neurological diseases, stomach diseases, I mean, there is no end in sight for the next generations. And if you're not here to serve the next generation, then I don't know what you're doing here, and you certainly aren't serving God. And thank you to you, Larry, and Rogie, and thank you, Chris, man. Love you, buddy.
Love you too, man.
Yeah, one day hopefully I can say thank you to Rogie too, myself, man. But
he may not know that's his nickname yet.
Well, guys, this has been a long, epic, really informative podcast. And so, Chris, I can't thank you again for connecting me to Chef Austin. This has been eye-opening, to say the least, man. And I really do hope folks that listen to this really get what we're trying to convey here. And I got to experience it firsthand, and I hope some people will listen to this conversation and immediately go over to your website and order some food so they get to taste it for themselves. There's a fundamental difference in the way that meat tastes versus what we get in the store. And I'm almost going to be mad at you because I don't know if I can go back anymore to what, the cheaper, but, the easy, effortless version of buying meat in a package from a store. But that's really the fundamental difference here is we're talking about improving the quality of food that we eat for an improved quality of life, man. And I'm on board. So thank you again for using this platform to tell your story, guys. And hopefully in a couple of years, we'll do it again and get to talk about the impact that you've had in the country and maybe the world as well.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.